All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a really thought-provoking book, The Fiat Standard by Saifedean Ammous.
So the book kicks off with this really powerful idea. It asks you to think, what if our entire financial system isn't some fact of nature, but is actually a piece of man-made technology? And like any technology, it has design features, and maybe, just maybe, some pretty serious bugs.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this idea of money as technology. Then, we'll dive into what Ammous calls the fiat operating system. After that, we'll explore its supposed impact on our daily lives and wrap up with the alternative the book puts forward. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, money as technology. So what does that even mean, right? Well, it's all about looking at money not as something that just is, but as something that was built. It's about questioning its origins, its design, or, as the book argues, maybe its lack of any real conscious design at all.
See, according to Ammous, the money system we have right now wasn't some grand plan designed for stability. Not at all. He argues it was more of an accident, a series of temporary fixes that just stuck. Things like governments stopping people from trading in their paper money for gold during wartime. These things were supposed to be temporary, but they became permanent. And it all came to a head in 1971, when the U.S. finally cut the dollar's last tie to gold. That was the moment our current global system was truly born.
All right, so let's pop the hood on this thing. How does this fiat operating system actually work, at least according to the book? Okay, so this is the absolute core of it, how new money gets made. The book's claim is that when a bank gives you a loan, it's not lending out someone else's savings, it's literally creating new money right there on the spot out of thin air. It's why the author has this great line, calling it fiat's antiquated and haphazard version of mining. And as you can imagine, this process leads to a lot of new money being created. A whole lot. The book digs into the data from 167 different countries and finds that between 1960 and 2020, the average, get this, the average annual growth in the money supply was a whopping 29%.
But here's what's really wild. Even if you look at the best currencies, the most stable ones, like the Swiss franc or the US dollar, you're still seeing annual growth of around 6.5%, 7.5%. Now, the author puts that right up against the historical growth of gold, which was more like 1 to 2% a year, or Bitcoin, which has a supply that's completely fixed by math. It's a pretty stark contrast.
So Ammous claims this whole setup has a recurring bug in its code. You might have heard of it, the business cycle, the boom and the bust. His argument is that this isn't natural. It's a direct result of central banks trying to steer the economy, which leads to these crazy cycles. You get these massive inflationary booms followed by painful deflationary busts. All because, he says, the credit being created isn't backed by any real, actual savings.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this all actually affect us, you and me? Well, this is where the book gets really provocative, connecting this big, abstract monetary system to the really concrete stuff in our everyday lives.
A huge idea in the book's critique is something called time preference. It's pretty simple, actually. When your money is constantly losing value, why would you save it for 30 years from now? The incentive is to spend it today, or even go into debt to buy things today. And the author argues this small individual choice, when repeated by millions, has these massive, profound consequences for all of society. And he points to architecture as Exhibit A. Think about it. He claims this shift towards now has given us buildings that are all about being cheap and fast to build. They're not built to last for centuries, to be beautiful and durable like the structures from older eras. It's all about short-term costs over long-term quality. And get this, the book makes another really bold connection. It links our monetary system directly to the food on our plates. He literally calls them fiat foods. The argument goes like this. As inflation makes good, nutrient-dense stuff like meat more and more expensive, the food industry steps in. And with a little help from government subsidies and official dietary advice, they push these cheap, mass-produced, and frankly, less nutritious alternatives to fill the gap in our shopping carts. And the critique doesn't stop there. He extends it all the way to scientific research, coining the term fiat science. The idea here is that when science is mostly funded by government grants, instead of what the market actually needs, the incentives get, weird. He argues it can push researchers to chase splashy headlines or politically popular topics, rather than doing the hard work that has real practical applications. Okay, so after laying out all these problems, the book finally pivots to a solution, or, to stick with the analogy, a potential software upgrade for money.
Now, the book presents Bitcoin, but maybe not in the way you're used to thinking about it. It's not about buying your coffee. It's pitched as a neutral, global settlement layer, a base money for the whole world. The author claims it solves two big problems at once. First, gold's problem, which is that it's physically hard to move around the planet. And second, fiat's problem, which is that it depends entirely on governments and banks, on centralized political control.
So, in the end, the book isn't necessarily predicting that fiat money is going to vanish tomorrow. It's more nuanced. It suggests Bitcoin could just exist alongside it, serving as a much better way to save for the long term. A kind of digital gold for individuals, for companies, and hey, maybe even for central banks themselves. A way to store value that's totally outside those credit-fueled boom and bust cycles we talked about.
Ultimately, the Fiat Standard really just wants to challenge you to look at money in a new way. To stop thinking of our financial system as this unchangeable force of nature, and to start seeing it for what it is, a technology. A technology that we can analyze, we can critique, and maybe, just maybe, we can upgrade. And that leaves us with the final question.